Thank you very much. And today, we're delighted to swear in our next Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Most of you know Tulsi. She's a fantastic woman. Tulsi, I want to just congratulate you, your husband, Abraham, your sister, and all of your friends. A lot of friends here. You have a lot of friends. I noticed that, huh?
I'm grateful.
They were all fighting for you. It worked out very well. Tulsi Gabbard's an American of extraordinary courage and exceptional patriotism. She's devoted her entire life to public service, and I've watched her for years on different shows and everything. I said, she's a woman of great common sense, and, you know, we like the common sense. It's a word that's being used a lot. I think we started it in terms of politics, but it's a word that's used a lot. It's usually pretty effective, too, and you really are. I've watched you even on Larry King. You know, you're very young. I don't know how you were Larry King, but you're very young. But you were, and you always had the situation covered properly. At 21 years old, Tulsi became the youngest woman ever elected to the Hawaii State Legislature. After 9/11, she joined the Hawaii Army National Guard and deployed abroad 3 times, and highly respected by everybody. So many people writing in letters saying she was so exceptional even then. She continues to serve as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, and Tulsi also served 4 terms in the United States House of Representatives, where she was a member of the House Armed Services Committee. She is a former vice chair of the National Democratic Party. Can you believe that? And here she is. That's very nice. We have a few of them. But she was never a Democrat. She was, at heart, she was a Republican. I watched her, and was a 2020 Democrat candidate for President of the United States. It's not easy, right? It's not so easy. People think it's easy. It's not easy. Throughout her service, Tulsi has always distinguished herself as a leader of the highest caliber. She's earned the respect and admiration and love of Americans on both sides of the aisle as her profound commitment to the values that keep us free, and she really does have those values as much as anybody. In recent years, Tulsi has been a courageous and often lonely voice speaking out against radical left's attacks on free speech and the dangers of an unelected deep state. And I have to say, she was very, very strong for me when I was going through all of the fake news and all of the problems that we had with some very sick people. She was always out there. Before I really knew her as well, she was out there defending me, so I appreciated that, Tulsi. But the threat of a warmongering military-industrial complex and the weaponization of government and governmental people that go out and persecute. They like to persecute people that are innocent. Tulsi herself became a target of that weaponization when she was outrageously placed on a suspected terrorist watch list by the Biden regime. It's a very evil regime after criticizing their appalling abuses of power. And I'm confident that as director of the National Intelligence...
You know, you'd think he was talking about the state of Connecticut, the Connecticut State Police, the Connecticut judiciary, which is weaponized and warring against the Constitution. Mr. President, the Connecticut state government is rogue and outlaw.
Radical Islamic terrorism and lots of other threats, too, threats from within, and give no quarter to America's foreign enemies. At the same time, I'm entrusting Tulsi with the responsibility of overseeing urgently needed reforms to the U.S. intelligence community to protect the rights and the civil liberties of all Americans. She'll provide the
rights and civil liberties of all Americans. That includes independent journalists here in the state of Connecticut, like Tyrant Studios.
There's only one thing I can say, that there's nobody like her for this job. This was a very easy one for me. She was recommended by some of the top people in that world. It's a little world, you know. It's a little
The
smart
state of Connecticut, make
world.
no mistake, people.
It's sometimes
The state of Connecticut is scared, is terrified right now. It is in full-blown panic mode and running damage control, trying to reassure all of its willful, criminally complicit participants in our local and state law enforcement agencies that everything's going to be okay. Just keep on violating federal law. We got your back.
and congratulations. You did this with Pam a few
The
days
Connecticut
ago,
judiciary is in
and
for a
again, my honor.
real
So
rude awakening.
congratulations to Tulsi,
And
and
it's about time
I think
people
Pam
like
is going to admit.
Andrew Pritchard, Tim Riley, Sam Magliari, Daniel Kokoska. We're all going to get some justice for a change.
Please place your left hand on the Constitution and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I, Tulsi Gabbard, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
and that I will bear true faith.
That means you, Connecticut State Police Union. That means you, Willimantic Police Department. That means you, Christy D. Kelly. That means you, former Deputy Chief Douglas Glode. That means you, former Chief Paul Hussey. That means you, New Haven PD. I think they're talking about you, New London PD. I think they're talking about you, Troop H, Troop K, Troop D. Yeah. Time's on our side now. The time of the family members, immediate family members
How's
of
the
local
Oval
law
Office
enforcement,
looking?
like
A little different.
Kevin Dean, who's been permitted by the state of Connecticut to literally threaten to shoot and kill independent journalists in the state of Connecticut, is over.
Okay, not bad. Ready? I'll stand up here. I think we'll do it right here. Come on over here, Abraham. Okay, I'm sure there are no questions.
Mr. President, when and where will you meet with
You know what, I'd like to have Tulsi say a few words first, and we could answer a couple of questions, okay? Good. Leave that. That's good.
Mr. President, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the trust that you have placed in me to fulfill this critical position as Director of National Intelligence at any time, but specifically during this time. Unfortunately, the American people have very little trust in the intelligence community, largely because they've seen the weaponization and politicization of an entity that is supposed to be purely focused on ensuring our national security. So I look forward to being able to help fulfill that mandate that
To help create transparency, accountability, and liability in our government. Perhaps the disclosure, full disclosure of all of the RFK, JFK, and MLK Jr. assassination files is a great place to start.
Mr. President, this is what I've dedicated my life to, and it is truly humbling to be in this position, to serve in your administration, help to rebuild that trust, and ultimately to keep the American people safe. Last thing I'll mention that in your national...
Safe from rogue, tyrannical law enforcement agencies as well.
Fellow service members who are here today, veterans, Medal of Honor recipients, how deeply that resonates with us. For those who volunteer to put their lives on the line when duty calls, but to have a president and commander-in-chief who recognizes the cost of that sacrifice and ensuring that war is the last resort, not the first. So thank you for your leadership on behalf of my friends here and all who wear the uniform. We're grateful. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. When and where do you plan on meeting with Vladimir Putin? And were there any preconditions set to agree to this meeting?
No, we had a great call, and it lasted for a long time, over an hour. This morning, I also had with President Zelensky a very good call after.
I'm going to have a very good call with President Trump. It's all in writing right now. We're working on it. Great things take time to create. The president and I will be chatting. It sounds insane, huh? Yeah, well, Tyrant Slayer Studios. The tenacity itself carries more weight than most people's character.
Beautiful soldiers that are just being decimated, and it would be nice to end it immediately. But we had a very good talk with, people didn't really know what President Putin's thoughts were, but I think I can say with great confidence he wants to see it ended also. That's good. And we're going to work toward getting it ended, and as fast as possible. It's
well, there you go. Let's talk about peace for a change, real quick.
And the bullet goes off, and the only thing it can hit is a body, a human body.
It's nice to have a president in the White House who doesn't want everyone to believe that Vladimir Putin is the boogeyman.
Towns have been largely demolished. It's a shame what's happened to that country. It would have never happened if I were president. That I can tell you. Would have never happened. It's to look at that. And October 7th would have never happened either, by the way, the Middle East. But we'll get it. I think we'll get it. We'll get something done. We're going to be meeting. Actually, tomorrow they're meeting in Munich, as you know, and we're going to have some other meetings. And I'll be dealing with President Putin largely on the phone, and we ultimately expect to meet. In fact, we expect that he'll come here, and I'll go there, and we're going to meet also probably in Saudi Arabia. The first time we'll meet in Saudi Arabia, see if we can get something done. But we want to end that war. That war is a disaster.
President is a very busy man. He's going to be hard to get a hold of and meet with and discuss these very egregious matters with. But I can guarantee once he gets wind of what's truly happening here in the state of Connecticut, I will have his complete undivided attention.
Crown Prince, and I think it'd be a very good place to meet.
So it sounds like that would just be a meeting between you and Putin and perhaps the Crown Prince, but not President Zelensky?
Probably we'll have a first meeting, and then we'll see what we can do about the second
Did you
meeting.
also commit to go to Ukraine?
What about Ukraine?
Did you commit to go to Ukraine as
No,
well?
I haven't. I haven't committed to
Would
go
you
to
go?
Ukraine. I would think about going. Yeah, I'd think about it. No problem.
You say today, Mr. President, that they received your vision. What is your plan to end this war? Like today, Secretary...
Well, I'm not going to tell you my plan. I can just tell you we've made a lot of progress. This should have been done by Biden, not by me, because this has been going on for now a long time, years. And it should have been done by Biden. Just like the young gentleman that I brought home yesterday after 2 weeks. We worked on it for 2 weeks. He was a fine man, and he was in there for 3.5, almost 4 years. And they weren't able to do a thing, and I got him out. And as you know, I didn't pay $6 billion. I didn't pay anything. We did a trade, and we did a good job. We got him out in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It should have been out years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Really should have been out years ago.
Propose NATO membership for Ukraine?
I don't think it's practical to have it, personally. I know that our new Secretary of Defense, who's excellent, Pete, made a statement today saying that he thinks it's unlikely or impractical. I think probably that's true. I think long before President Putin, they said there's no way they'd allow that. This has been going on for many, many years. They've been saying that for a long time, that Ukraine cannot go into NATO. And I'm okay with that. I just want the war, whether they are or they're not. But it certainly would seem to be that most people have said that that is something that's not going to
Maybe
happen.
a good start in restoring faith in our intelligence community.
No, I don't think so. He's there, but at some point.
Maybe a great place to start would be calling this war what it's always been, which is a big bogus sham, a means, a vehicle to finance our capital and transfer our sovereignty to Ukraine.
If it ends, he wants it to end. And that's President Putin said that. He wants it to end he doesn't want to end it and then go back to fighting 6 months later. We talked
call it
about
what
the
it is.
possibility, I mentioned it, of a ceasefire.
Let's not mince words.
Probably end up at some point getting a ceasefire in the not too distant future.
Do you expect Ukraine?
Say it, what?
Do you view Ukraine as an equal member of this peace process?
It's an interesting question. I think they have to make peace. Their people are being killed, and I think they have to make peace.
We will continue to provide.
I said that was not a good war to go into, and I think they have to make peace. That's what I think.
Why did you decide to provide support to Ukraine?
Would you support Zelensky ceding territory or exchanging territory in any agreement to end the war?
Well, he's going to have to do what he has to do, but, you know, his poll numbers aren't particularly great, to put it mildly. He's got a country where, you know, it's been savaged and attacked, and he's got an army that's been very, very brave, actually, despite the fact that, you know, we've given him, in my opinion, $350 billion. That's what the real number is. You don't hear that number. And Europe has given, in my opinion, $100 billion. And they've done it in the form of a loan. And I have a Secretary of Treasury right now who's actually quite brave. He's over in Ukraine on a train. And there's a lot of things happening around that train that aren't so good. And he's going there to get a document done where we're going to be assured that we're going to, in some form, get this money back, because we're putting up far more money than Europe, and Europe is in far more danger than we are. We have an ocean in between. Europe has nothing in between.
What he's just said there is very important. The Secretary of Treasury, that's important because the president has very little to do with the deal. This is always about money. War is always about money.
This should have never happened. It should have never started. And once it did, other things should have happened. Other things should have taken place. So we're getting security on our money. We're going to have it secured by, they have rare earth, and they have oil and
the guy
gas,
really
and they
in
have a lot
charge.
of other things. And
The guy in
we're asking
charge,
for
the
security
Secretary
on
of Treasury, the guy,
They've agreed to it.
the assistant manager of our bankruptcy, who's working for the chairman of the Fed, is going to go stop the war, not the president. Let's not make any mistake about that.
When would the U.S. stop sending?
Because if we didn't do that, then Putin would say he won. We're the thing that's holding it back. And frankly, we'll go as long as we have to go, because we're not going to let the other happen. But President Putin wants to have peace now, and that's good. And he didn't want to have peace with Biden.
Was that conversation with Putin?
And you tell me why that is, okay?
Was that conversation with Putin to start these negotiations part of the deal to bring Fogel home?
No, but it was,
I don't like the politics he's playing with Putin and Russia here.
in fact, Mark wasn't feeling well, but he was all of a sudden about 2 weeks ago, he started being treated very nicely. He said they took him out for haircuts. They took him out. They helped him out a little bit and made him feel better, made him look better. And they were nice to him. And he said, I saw something happening. And it coincided with when I came into office. So that was nice. And he's a fine person. He was so happy to be out. He was there for 3.5 years plus, and he shouldn't have been there at all. They should have had him out much faster than that.
What does make you believe that Zelensky will agree?
Wait, go ahead, please.
Sorry. Sir, just to be clear, do you see any future in which Ukraine returns to its
Yeah, sir. What is your plan for the state of Connecticut? What are you going to do to address the egregious waste, fraud, abuse, and totalitarian corruption, the authoritarian Orwellian government out here that is running amok and persecuting law-abiding citizens who hold near and dear to their hearts the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights? What we have going on here in the state of Connecticut is a complete racket. We need judges, we need lawyers, we need state officials, we need local officials charged under RICO. We need a complete overhaul of the runaway, unchecked, unmolested, criminal outlaw government here in the state of Connecticut, starting with the top. Let's go from top to bottom. Let's start with Anne and Ned Lamont and their offshore bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. Let's start there, shall we? Yeah, who's with me? Can I get a like for that? Can we get some support for accountability, transparency, and liability here in the state of Connecticut? Can we get some protection for the genuine investigative journalists, independent journalists here in the state of Connecticut whose lives are being threatened? Can we do something about the family members of local law enforcement that are threatening to shoot and kill me for doing my job out here for the American people? That'd be great, Mr. Trump.
If I do it today, I could almost do it right now. Would you like me to talk about it now? I don't want to take anything away from this young lady's day, because this is her day, and I may do it later on, or I may do it tomorrow morning, but we'll be signing reciprocal tariffs. The world has taken advantage of the United States for many years. They've charged us massive tariffs.
The Connecticut State Police Union and the local police unions, the public employee unions, the teachers unions, the nurses unions here in the state of Connecticut have been taking advantage of the Connecticut citizens for far too long.
It's very weak, and Biden was even weaker on steel. The steel was just absolutely, it really started with Obama. The world really took advantage of us, and then that morphed into Biden. And what they did was he was so worried about trying to attack his political opponent that he didn't know what he was doing with respect to countries taking advantage. He should have looked at the countries, both friend and foe, taking advantage of us. So we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs, which is whatever they charge, we charge, very simply. But we're going to be
Considering exemption, talk about why.
Terrible miscarriages of justice and misappropriation of public funds and tax dollars continue to plague the state of Connecticut and its populace, more specifically, the family units and the strong, heterosexual, independent, self-sustaining males and females trying to raise their children in this state. For example, you can't get your child a crown. You can't, dental work here for children is a nightmare. If your child is under the age of 12 years old in the state of Connecticut and you need a crown and you're on Husky insurance because you've been priced out of the market due to the socialist takeover of private health care, which is now a public racket here in the state of Connecticut. And so you're on Husky, your kid needs dental work, needs a crown, not going to happen. Especially if he's under 12 years old. You're going to have to fight tooth and nail for that. But if your 9-year-old has been convinced by the Public Employees Union, the Teachers Union more specifically, that his name's not Billy and he's not really a boy and he's a girl now, the state of Connecticut Husky will gladly pay to perform, self-mutilation surgery and sexually transform this child, all on the taxpayer's dollar. But if he needs a tooth, forget about it. You got a kid that needs a tooth? No way. You got a mad scientist in your basement playing doctor with the kid downstairs? You can get taxpayer-funded surgery for that. We got serious problems here in Connecticut. Serious problems. Mental health is out of control. The mental health of the general population in the state of Connecticut is in dire straits.
As an example, $59 million going to a little small group in New York City. You get nothing going to North Carolina to help.
I see the lawsuit filed against New York now. Got the new U.S. Attorney General filing a lawsuit against the state of New York for its sanctuary city practices. Are they afraid of Connecticut?
What they've done, a hotel that was not luxury, that's getting luxury rates for migrants, where they're making a fortune, and we catch them, but a judge says, well, even though it may be a fraud, you have to send the money in anyway.
This might be news to a lot of people, but with all the talk of judges and people trying to block Donald Trump's executive orders, and with his mention of judges here today in this press conference, I have to say
things to look
The
at
Connecticut
now.
judges are
Look at what's
terrified.
going on
They're
with this
probably
whole
already
thing.
packing
And
their
this is
things and
just
preparing to
one
run for the hills,
We haven't
as
talked about the
most
Department of
Connecticut
Education.
judges
We
are
haven't talked about the
on the
military.
bench
We haven't talked
illegally
about a
and
lot
in
of
violation of the
things that
state
are very big.
constitution and
What's
Connecticut
happened,
general
as an
statutes.
example, you'll have cases where
But that's a whole nother
you
story
have a
unto
3-month
itself.
contract,
Still big
and
news.
maybe the
I
guy
will
that
be
signs the
reporting it here
contract
and showing you just how these criminals elect themselves, appoint themselves, and continue to keep themselves at the helm of the racket at the expense of our children and the very future that we rely on being there for them, the future that we've worked towards preserving for them. It's all being squandered here in Connecticut. So big things happening and big expectations out of Connecticut for Donald Trump and this presidency. Let's see what he does for us.
Elon had an expression yesterday because nobody cares. It's a great expression. Nobody cares. The guy that signed the contract didn't care. Maybe there, may not be there, maybe crooked, who knows. But you have to care. Otherwise, you can't really run a thing like that, or you can't run a country, really, because there's so many transactions, thousands and thousands of transactions. And if you don't have people that care, you're going to lose control. And that's what's happened. And we've caught it. Now,
Well, we
what
care.
we caught
We
is
care
big.
tremendously out here in Connecticut. I care. I got 5 children I care about. I got a beautiful wife I care about. I got a country I'm relying on to be there for my kids when I'm old and gone. I care. So what are you going to do for me, pal? What do you got for me, President Trump? Email me, studioadmin@tyrantslayerstudios.com. Get me on that press corps, pal. I'll get on a plane today and I'll fly out to D.C. and I can meet with you right away. There's plenty to discuss.
Say that it doesn't make any difference what you find. You just keep paying the money. That's a hell of a way to be. And I follow the courts. I have to follow the law. All it means is that we appeal. But that gives people time to cover their tracks. And that's what they do. So it's a very bad thing that's taking place. But hopefully, if the courts, hopefully the courts will be fair. They don't have to be very fair. They just have to be a little bit fair, because this is so egregious what's taken place. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Nobody's seen numbers like this. These are massive numbers. $9 million for somebody to go and stand in a store.
See what he did there? He just unwittingly revealed his knowledge of the corruption inside of the judiciary. They don't need to be completely fair. They just need to be a little bit fair, he says, with a little smirk too. So that reveals his insider knowledge of how the judiciary is actually functioning, and he knows it's wrong, but he doesn't intend to do anything about it. So, until he can show us better than he can tell us about this whole campaign of exposing waste and fraud and abuse and saving us money, until I actually see it, I'm not believing any of it. And I hope you don't either. This is all just politics, a transfer of power. One side has it now instead of the other.
Because I wouldn't sign the contract for $5.7 billion.
Don't let it divide you from your fellow
I was
citizens,
able to
please.
cut $1.7 billion off the price. And it didn't take me long. $1.7 billion. If people would care, they'd be able to do that with every single contract that's put before them. And we wouldn't have deficits. We'd have nothing but a tremendously low-taxed, wonderful country. But they have to care. And speaking of that, Boeing, we're not happy with the service we're getting in terms of those planes. They would like to get more money. We're not happy about that whole thing. We signed a very strong contract. I signed a guaranteed maximum contract, which
Look, big problems in America. Airplanes, housing, economy, borders, language, culture.
They have to produce the product.
Big problems. So, big aspirations, big dreams, and big work ahead for Tyrant Slayer Studios. Big changes coming up.
Whatever it costs, time and material, no dates, no.
Follow along the presidency with Tyrant Slayer Studios here on Tyrant Slayer Studios on YouTube. Stay tuned for TyrantSlayerStudios.com and our new members-only page, subscription services, our online store.
It's all electric catapults, which don't work. And they have all magnetic elevators to lift up
We'll keep you up to
25
date on
planes
the
at a
latest and
time,
greatest.
20 planes at a time. And instead of
We are
using
going to be
hydraulic,
launching
like
a
on
3-hour
tractors
a
that can
day, 5-day a week
handle anything
podcast.
from hurricanes to lightning to
Going to be
anything,
doing lots
they
of
use
things here
magnets.
locally.
It's
We
a
are
new
bringing
theory.
sheriffs to the
Magnets
state of
are gonna lift
Connecticut.
the planes
Period. End
up,
of discussion.
and it doesn't work. And they had billions and billions of dollars of cost overruns. I met the architect. I said, have you designed a ship before? This is one of the biggest ships in the world. It's like landing at LaGuardia Airport. But you look at the kind of waste, fraud, and abuse that this country is going through, and
Magic
we have to
words
straighten
again,
it
he
out.
says.
We have
Waste,
great people going into the
fraud,
military.
and abuse, he says. They're stealing all of my mantra here.
Our purchasing, the purchasing.
Where's he
and
been?
when you look at the USAID, when you look at the things that they're giving to them, the billions of dollars that they're giving to,
He's talking about the police
it
unions.
doesn't make sense. It is interesting that when you're looking for fraud, you look at
All you have to do
items,
is look at the Connecticut State Police and how they collect double overtime sleeping in their cars.
Look at data, and they're all fraudulent. You know, by just looking at the topic, they're all fraudulent, except it's the opposite. You'll find one or two that's like a legitimate reason. So I just want to thank Elon for going through it. I want to thank all the people that are working
you know what?
with
At the
him.
end of
We
the
have
day,
a big group of people. I think the lowest IQ is about
Elon
160.
didn't have to do any of this.
That's very high. I think you have a couple
Obviously,
of
he cares.
182s in there, but they're doing a fantastic job. He doesn't need it, and they
And
don't
look,
need
folks,
it.
if you're out
but
there and
we're
you're
showing
upset
things,
about
and
these
it's
audits
gonna
and you're
be
upset
it's a
about this
big-
exposure
people have no idea.
you know,
how
the
important it
fraud.
is. Yeah.
and the cutting of these things,
Education to be closed.
perhaps you're part of the problem.
I'd like
Maybe you
it
ought to
be
think about
closed
that.
immediately. Look, the Department of Education's a big con job. We're ranked, so they rank the top 40 countries in the world. We're ranked number 40th, but we're ranked number 1 in one department, costs per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world, but we're ranked number 40. We've been between 38
Yeah,
and
you know
40.
why?
The last time I looked,
Because
it was 38. And then I
The
looked
teachers
today,
union, because unions are
at number 40.
a
So we're ranked
cancer
40.
in our education system. You can thank unions for that. Organized crime has a stronghold in our school system.
In the top 5. And,
So, of course, it's going to cost way more than it should, and the quality of the product is going to be complete garbage. You know, I mean, that's why people don't buy American cars. You know, even the American auto workers union is putting out a shit quality product.
Indiana, you have a great new governor. You have
Been this way for decades.
a great senator that Jim Banks just got elected. You got great people. I'll tell you what, Indiana is going to be fantastic. We probably have 35, maybe 37 states that will do as well as Denmark, Norway, Finland, Sweden. They'll be just as good. Then you have the ones that we all know about. It'll be the same story. But you know what? Even they will be good. Because you look at New York, you give it to Westchester County, you give it to Long Island, you give it to Nassau County, you give it to Suffolk County. Same thing you go out to, and you give it to upstate New York. So you'd have 4 or 5 sections. You give it to Manhattan. Manhattan's a little bit tougher for some reason. I don't know why it would be tougher, but it is. You give to California, and you go to various areas outside of Los Angeles, and you might have 6 or 7 different subgroups.
Tulsi Gabbard,
But
sworn in today,
generally, like if you go to
February
Iowa, you give it to
12th.
Iowa. You don't have subgroups, you have Iowa.
2025.
And other places that do a good job. If they do a good job, they're going to do a great job in education.
This
Those places
administration
will be
moving
every
very
good-
fast, getting
every bit
things
as
done
good
very quickly here.
as various countries that do so well. All the time, it's the same countries that are doing well. And so we have a Department of Education where people from Washington, D.C., who in many cases don't care about the kids out in the country. They don't care about the farms and the farmer's daughter and the farmer's sons. We have a massive bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. We have buildings that are all over the city. Department of Education.
This is
I never
nothing
said-
new.
Department of
We
Education.
already know
in all
this.
these
What are we
buildings.
doing about
By the
it?
way,
I'd
nobody
much
shows
rather
up
you
to
tell
work
me what
because
you're
they're all
gonna do
working
about
at
it
home.
instead
You
of
know,
telling me
quote,
what we
working
already
at
know there,
home.
pal.
They're not working at home. And a lot of them have second jobs. And that's the other thing that
You
Elon
can do
Musk
better,
is
Mr.
looking at.
President.
How many of these people are
Be
getting
more honest, please.
working at home, but they're not working because they have second jobs and even third jobs. You're going to find a lot of them, and those people are going to be fired because we have to make our government smaller. All right, one more question. Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead. Nice to see you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Two questions, one on Ukraine again, and then another one on the Kennedy Center.
He said one question, Jennifer.
Did Pete Hegseth take away some of your negotiating abilities with Putin by taking Ukraine's sovereign integrity off the table, by taking...
No, I haven't done that. I'm backing Ukraine. I'm backing Ukraine. Don't say that. I'm approving, but I do want security for our money. You know, Europe is getting security. You know that, right? They're giving their money in the form of a loan. Nobody knows that. And why are we at 350 billion and Europe, which doesn't separate with an ocean like we do, we have a little thing called an ocean in between. Why is it that Europe is paying 200 billion less than us to help Ukraine? Very similar size. If you add up all the European countries, it's a little bit smaller than the U.S. in terms of the economy. Why is it that they're not paying the kind of numbers that they should be paying? And then on top of it, and I've been saying this to Biden, I told Biden, I said, you ought to be asking for either a loan or some kind of a security, like their oil and gas or something for the money, because you're putting up much more money than Europe, and you have no security. Europe's putting up a much smaller amount, and it's in the form of a loan, because we have people that were incompetent in the last administration, grossly incompetent.
That's the truth.
And we're changing it. But we change it, and all we do is we get hit by lawsuits from the radical left all the time. But here we are, we stand, and I guess we've done okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Folks, don't forget to tune in to Tyrant Sawyer Studios for your updates on your local and national news. Stick with me here, man. We're relaunching, and we got greatness that lies ahead. That and more for you, only for you, here at Tyrant Sawyer Studios.